Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Bryan Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. So, one of the things I love about Christmas is hockey, World Juniors, sports on TV, and stuff like that. And also thinking about the year that's passed and politics going forward. And so a buddy of mine, Dan Badanis, introduced me to Bryan Lewis, who is a fascinating gentleman because he spent over 1,000 games officiating in the NHL. Then he became referee in chief, and now he's a politician, a town councillor in Halton Hills. Bryan, welcome to our show. How are you, sir?
I am doing very good. Thank you very much, Bryan. One of us are spelt wrong. I want that clarity there.
Beg pardon?
In the Bryan part, one of us are spelt wrong.
Well, you know what? I enjoy the way that you spell your name, but the biggest problem I've got, which you probably don't have because of the Y, and I've been actually thinking about changing my name with a Y, is people always mix up the I and the A in my name and spell me Brain, which is kind of nice, but frustrating at the same time.
Yeah,
anyway,
right.
So tell me, Christmas, you said, hasn't come yet to the Lewis family. How come?
Well, I guess with things going on and the changes that have been made, we had family that had planned to fly in from Arizona who early last week declined. And we can completely understand. So we had made arrangements for family photos and just a really fun time when grandkids were around. So in the meantime, what we do is we don't have Christmas on Christmas Day. We get together with a chef from town that we've known for many, many years. And our family, all grandkids, everybody does a little bit of a production line where people have donated food products, and some we have to buy, but we always buy locally. And then we offer out to whether it be seniors, whether it be people at home alone, and the lineup for people to deliver. We delivered approximately 120 meals to people within our community on Christmas Day. That was our Christmas. And it's a fun day. Pardon me. When you see the kids standing in a line, and whether they're putting in apples, putting in granola bars, whether they're putting in fruit, whether this doesn't matter what they're doing. Our complete family here was all part of a process. And I have to stress here, done with a chef who knows what he's doing big time. And it's a turkey dinner with cranberries and everything. That then the lineup of volunteers that they have, we assign them to times to come and pick up so many bags, and they take off and deliver. And we even delivered to fire halls and to our firefighters who were sitting and I'll say looking out for us. We took them dinners in a conjunction with trays of sweets and tarts and whatever have you, to the ambulance, to police departments. And at the end of the day, we all said the same thing. By 3 o'clock, we're in our cars going home.
Fantastic. Sounds like a very rewarding day.
It was what we called a feel-good day.
And Christmas will eventually come to your house?
It's our plans, yes. In fact, I heard my wife on the phone this morning talking to daughters. Okay, so we finally had to get that 25-pound turkey out of the freezer, and it's doing its thing right now. And we are going to have Christmas tomorrow, where we can sit and relax and really enjoy what it is we've done. And now to that, we have some family members that we've had to exclude as a result of health-related issues. Yeah. And so this gives us an opportunity. I'll say, what does it matter as long as we're getting together? And some of our family can't get together for obvious reasons, but for the most part, we're doing Christmas tomorrow.
Well, enjoy your Christmas. So tell me, some people may not even know where Halton Hills is. Tell us where Halton Hills is, please.
It is northwest of Toronto. If I said to you, get in your car, you've just landed in Toronto, or you're downtown Toronto. Get in your car, go to the 401 highway, work yourself west, going past Brampton, going towards Kitchener and Guelph. Just before you get to Milton, there's a really good road called Trafalgar Road. You can head north on that, and you get you right to the heart of the Golden Horseshoe. We're very friendly people. I represent Ward 2, which is the rural environment. And if you let me know you're coming, I'll get the carpet out and get it cleaned.
When did you decide to get into politics, sir?
It's boy, oh boy, they've gone by fast. 22 years ago.
Unbelievable.
And what it was, I resigned from the director of officiating in the National Hockey League. And a counselor colleague of mine came to me, and I guess he was picking on me because he thought I would have more time. And I threw my hat in the ring, and that hat has been in the ring for, 4 or 5 elections since, and served the rural environment of Halton Hills, which I absolutely enjoy. And it's been a fun process. So it's a long-winded answer to your question, Bryan. 22 years ago, I started in politics.
Why? What's the motivation to spend 22 years of your life after you've had a full career in the NHL in politics?
Well, I can make that very simple. I grew up in this town. And when I grew up as a kid in Georgetown, which is part of Halton Hills, Georgetown, Acton, and the rural environment combined to make Halton Hills. When I grew up, my street was virtually at the end of town. And the town has grown so much now, I'd say it's probably the middle of town. I live out in the rural environment. I can look out my window and see a cornfield across the road. I can see a soybean field beside me. But it allows you then to get a mixture of people who are in the business world, people who are farmers. And at the end of the day, when a counselor colleague came to me and said, well, you've got more time. And I thought, you know what? That's the least I can do. Never thinking that 22 years later, I would still be involved in it. But I think that speaks to the fun, because, you know, it's not something you have to do. You put your name forward, and then if you've been elected, then you got to get your hands dirty and do what you promised people you would do. It's a 4-year term. And at the end of 4 years, I might say, I've had enough, or the residents might say, we had enough of you. And so far that hasn't happened, which has been great. As I said, it's been 22 years. It gets busier each day. And there's hardly a day goes by there isn't something in the political world. But there are many times I think, if I just put my striped shirt on between Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones, I can handle this. So my prior life has definitely been a benefit to being involved in politics. Would you recommend it to other people? I would. And I'll tell you what, to me, is I've sat down with some people in the business world, and there's no hiding of what the pay is. And you can sit there and say, holy moly, here, you're out 5, 6, 7 days a week, and you divide that into the hourly rate, you realize you're not even getting minimum wage. Then don't put your name forward. So you can't say, well, it doesn't pay enough, because that's the money is the secondary part of it. Would I recommend that people do it? Yes. If you have the time and you have the desire and the energy to take on some of the things, and some of them are very simple, but by the same token, if you've got, I'll say, farming community concerned about some issues going on in the rural environment, that's when you've got to act. So I can't sit here and say it's how many hours it's going to be per week, because you just don't know. But I can tell you this, in the last 5 years, it's been extremely busy. So would I recommend it? I say, you know what? Try it. So elections are coming up again in October. Is your name going to be on the ballot? It's a question right now that I've been asked on a number of occasions. We've also had our mayor's announced that he's not rerunning, Mayor Rick Burnett. And only since yesterday did I have 3 people inquire as to whether you would or wouldn't put your name forward for mayor. I've enjoyed what I'm doing. And you know what? It's too early, Brian, to make a decision here. As long as my health is good, as long as my family are fine, then I would say right now, if I had to make up my mind within 5 minutes, I'd say yes. But perhaps, and after a month or 2 months, until you really, really, really have to put your name forward, I don't know what the answer would be. For town councillor or for mayor? I think my wife, after 55 years, would disown me if I ran for mayor. So that could be an easy way out. I'm not too sure. I'll say the counselor part of it intrigues me because I've enjoyed it. And the other part kind of intrigues me, but quite frankly, I don't know. I'd have to put it. And our mayor's been very kind and gracious and tell you how many hours you've got to put in. And I don't know if there isn't a weekend that isn't messed up because of politics. I'd have to sit down with the mayor to find, okay, what does it really entail before I'd ever put my name forward? So I need to do homework on that second part. Well, I have to tell you that I've known the mayor of Milton. I've been very friendly with the former mayor of Mississauga, Hazen McCallion, and both of them have told me that one of the reasons why they've stayed healthy later in life is the incredible activity level of being mayor, and so there's something to say about, yeah, sometimes you want to take it easy, and yet at other times you want to keep busy. Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, the perfect one to ask is obviously if you're going to ask Mayor Hazel, there's no one there that's been overdrive for so many years. So if that's what keeps you young, she's done a fantastic job. She certainly has. We're going to take a break and come back more with Bryan Lewis, town councillor from Halton Hills, as well as former referee on the NHL in just a minute. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Bryan Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with Bryan Lewis. Bryan is a fascinating gentleman. He's for 22 years been a town councillor in the town of Halton Hills, which is northwest of Toronto. And before that, he was an officiate, a referee in the NHL, and ended that career as the referee in chief, in charge of all the referees. Bryan, let's talk about hockey and the NHL for a minute. During your lifetime, your career in hockey, it must have changed quite a bit. It's faster. It's a different game, is it not? It is. And in fact, when I sit and I watch a hockey game, and that could be, I'll set the Olympics aside, because to me, it's a little bit of a special brand of hockey. But from a national hockey perspective, we were often accused as officials of putting our whistle in our pocket in the third period and not making any calls. I only say to that is the players play differently when the score is 3-3 with 10 minutes to go. But yet it seems to be me that's being charged with not making the calls. But I think what's happened ever since there was a lockout and they said, okay, we're going to clamp down on obstruction fouls. And the idea was to allow the talented players to show their talents. And I think it's paid off today in terms of speed up and down the ice. We don't have, the rules have changed so dramatically over the years in terms of bench emptying brawls and things of that nature. They don't happen anymore because the rules have changed. And the only thing, I mean, from a personal perspective, I wouldn't mind seeing them change a little bit more to even ban fighting. You can watch Olympics, you can watch the juniors on TV, and we don't have fights. I've been to the Olympics in Nagano, some fantastic hockey played. And so to me, that would be another part of the turn the screw on the altercation and the rough style of play. Unfortunately, injuries are going to happen, and they happen from time to time. It's those things that we would call an on-purpose foul that have to be addressed. And they have people whose sole function is to administer to people who have been bad, whether that be using their stick, whether that be using their elbow, whatever have you. And the idea is that will we ever have a world or ever have a hockey where there's not some, I'll call it more violent hits? No, I don't think so. Because some of them, quite frankly, are accidents. People are just not looking out for themselves. So the game itself has changed in terms of speed. When we think about it, before skills contests, it was fantastic if a guy could shoot the puck 100 miles an hour. Now they're going well past that. And the speed up and down the ice is far greater than it ever has before. When I refereed, I would skate, because there was only one referee on the ice, I would skate roughly 7.9 miles a night. And after doing more than 1,000 games in the National Hockey League, if I was at a banquet tonight, I'm saying, oh, I've skated from my home in Georgetown. I've been to Vancouver and I'm in Winnipeg on my way home, just to give you an idea of the magnitude. And that doesn't count when I started, also start in the Western Hockey League, the Central Hockey League, and the American Hockey League, where I have no idea how many games it worked, and playoff games and that kind of stuff. So it's the game has changed. I don't want to say dramatically, but I would say this. I think the game has changed for the better.
How'd you get your start in hockey, sir?
I played junior hockey with a variety of teams. I was in Burlington, I was in Brampton, and I think the one that sticks out of my most, I ended up in Mississauga. I ended up playing
Mississauga connection.
It was a place to go. It was a place to play hockey, and we joke. And if my wife was here, she'd probably give me a little cuff beside the head, because my favorite line was Mr. Howard Pallett, who was the owner of the Dixie Beehives then at the old Dixie Arena. He said to me, "You want to play hockey for me?" And I said, "Yes, Mr. Pallett, I do." And then he said, "You have to marry my daughter." And I would say this, 55 years later, it still worked out. So playing left defense for the Dixie Beehives was far more than just playing hockey. And the irony in that, the guy that was the goalie, Ron Rutledge, who ran the arena for a period of time, he married Howard's number one daughter. So that's always been our claim to fame, was that we made the team because we also took on a wife, and it worked out very well. So it's a long-winded answer to your question, but that's what took me to Mississauga. And so I was able to sweep this young lady off her feet, and we lived in Mississauga for a period of time. And unfortunately, in the area that we were, every time they cut down an apple tree behind us, they put up an apartment building. And now we live out in the country, as I said before. My view across the street through snow is a cornfield. My view beside me is soybeans. Dramatically different than worrying about what the sidewalk looks like in front of my home. So we started in Mississauga as a family, and we've ended up in Halton Hills as a family.
And how'd you get from playing hockey to officiating?
Well, I had two chances at junior A hockey. I tried out for the Toronto Marlies at the time and for the Niagara Falls Flyers. And I remember playing in a preseason game for Niagara Falls Flyers, and I guess I didn't do things right. And the owner of the team was a coach named Hap Ems, who had been around the game for a long time. And next thing he knows, he's telling me the next day at practices, "Here's your bus ticket to go home." So that virtually ended my desire, or ended my opportunity to ever make it to the National Hockey, which most kids do in this day and age. And I decided then that since I'd been 15, in 1957, I actually started then taking this world famous whistle and using it. And so I said then, I put down my stick and picked up a whistle. And for 65 years later, I'm still either wearing the whistle, caring about people that do, or wearing or caring about people who've worn a striped shirt. So it's been a long journey in the officiating business. but man, oh man, has it been fun.
Fantastic. And I presume all across North America.
It's not only North America today. I've been to Japan a couple of times. I was to the Olympics in Nagano. I ran officiating clinics in Switzerland. So it's far more. When you get on an airplane today and you take out the map that's there and you start to circle all the little places that you've been to, and whether that's Thief River Falls, Minnesota, or whether it's Dallas, Texas, man, there's a lot of circles on that map or place you've been. That's in North America alone. And now I've had the pleasure of saying, I've been to some significant places, and you know what? Hockey took me there.
Would you get to know the players, or no, you tried to keep your distance?
Well, we had a few rules. I mean, some of the players you could talk to, communicate with, and some of them I've said many times at a banquet circuit. It's nice to hear you speak and say 3 words without one of them being profane. But by the same token, for the most part, you would get to know. In our day, it was one referee, and we did probably 75 games in the regular season, and then a few playoff games and some preseason games. So you were bumping into a lot of the same players. In my entire career, I only can recall one player that ever made any type of an incident after a game. The rest of them are fantastic. And of course, today now, when you're doing old timers games and the fun stuff with the veterans, as an example, I did an outdoor game in Minnesota. And I remember saying to the various players there that you can't play until you apologize to me for some of the things you said to me when we were actually when it meant things. And so I had players jumping over the boards and saying, "Hey, Louis," I said, "I'm sorry." So that's the fun part. And I guess to sum that part of it up, it's amazing how good you are when you're gone.
Yep, for sure. What an incredible experience, though, that you must have had, and the changes in hockey. I guess when you started, were people wearing helmets?
Oh, no. And just as an example, I didn't have a scrapbook. And a guy who was the best man at our wedding said to me one day, "Show me your scrapbook." And it's up here between my ears, which is a scary place to have it because there's not a very good storage bin. And then from that point on, including yesterday, I got 3 pictures of me refereeing a hockey game, 3 different games. So I send them off to my printing buddy and said, "Run me off 5 copies." And then I put them in a folder with the plastic shields, one for each one of my children so that my grandkids could see what Papa did, one for my best man and one for ourselves. 3 pictures came in yesterday. And it's amazing of what it is you get. And there are some people, there's an organization in and around called Society of Ice Hockey Researchers. These people are finding pictures that are absolutely fantastic. So I just simply say, "Run me off 5 copies," and they become all part of the scrapbook. So what started out to be a memory bank theory now is just that I'm on binder number 2 of a career that started, I said, going way back in 1957 as an active official, and 65 years later in some capacity. And I've been the referee in chief, not only in the National Hockey League. My son-in-law was connected with the East Coast Hockey League, and he says, "Hey, can you help us?" So when retirement at the NHL kicked in 2000, I went to the ECHL to help them for a few years. And our son became the commissioner of the Central Hockey League. "Dad, can you help me?" So I was the referee in chief for the Central Hockey League for a few years. And roughly 11 years ago, I got approached. Could I be the referee in chief of university hockey? So OUA hockey, men's hockey program. So for, I think it's 11 years now, I've been able to do that. And so and then you go out and you watch your grandkids play. So there's lots of reasons to take me back into the arena, but I think there's a lot of arenas over North America that I've been into. And again, that's all part of the fun part. So it's gone from not being able to play the game worth a dang to working over 1,000 games in National Hockey League. So it's been okay.
Hockey participation is down or not growing as much as soccer and other games, mainly because of the cost. What do you think we need to do, if anything, to ensure that kids today can afford to play hockey?
You know what I would say here, even from a community perspective, we have funding that is available to help people. And you look at Canadian Tire, the Jumpstart programs, there's different programs around that are there. The toughest part is for anybody to say, "I need help." And whether there are people within your community who say, "We can help." So Johnny Jones can't play hockey because he can't afford it. And we understand that because it is a very expensive sport. I mean, when I look at the equipment that our 2 grandkids are putting on now to go play hockey, our equipment was not like that. I couldn't imagine what the cost. The bag alone has to be a ton of money just to put the stuff in. And I think here that we as a society today, and we as people today, And whether that be the politics or whether that be the kindness of somebody, the moment you find out about somebody that can't afford, the key word, you can't afford to have this be a sport that their youngsters are involved in, I like to think that the kindness of somebody is going to find equipment for that youngster, young girl to play with.
The other issue, I guess, is just ice time. And it seems that there's less ice time available. When I was growing up, we had practices and games all hours of the day. But now, when my kids were teenagers, they were practicing at 6 a.m. in the morning. That was the only time available.
Well, and that was the same thing here. I mean, I can remember going to the arena and virtually having the key to unlock the front door of the old rink. I was also chairman of our committee up here, and we recognized the fact that we didn't have enough ice to service what was being. And you got to remember here, those buildings don't sit idle in the summertime. Whether they're done, we've got a tremendous lacrosse community, ball hockey. So it's not a case of always just because there's ice in that building. And then we look at and say, okay, there's ice. Our girls up here called Twisters organization is huge for young ladies to play hockey. And then all the minor hockey programs that you got going. We tore down one building that was costing us a ton of money to function with. And we had 2 arenas. We were able to add 2 to it. So that became a 4-rink complex. And then we went to Acton where it was a 1-rink complex, added another one. Why? Because the demand for ice was there. And yes, to your point, it is an expensive process. But got to remember here, it's not only the building, but it's the maintenance of the building that has to go on. And we're not allowed to make any money while we do it. So the idea is it's expensive, yes, but it's something, it's the cost of doing business.
But it's a unbelievably exciting game. I used to be a financial guy with Molson's that owned at the time the Montreal Canadiens, and ended up spending a fair amount of time with Ronald Corey, who was the president of the Montreal Canadiens, and the senior vice president of corporate and public affairs at the time was a gentleman by the name of Jean Beliveau, who you probably met a couple hundred times on the ice. And I remember having a really interesting lunchtime conversation in the boardroom one day where we were talking sort of academically about hockey. And Ronald Corey was saying that that soccer doesn't have enough offense, that basketball has no defense, and that baseball, the defense controls the ball and offense gets a split second to do something with it. And therefore hockey is always offense, and it's the right amount of combination of offense and defense such that it makes for a really exciting game. What do you think of that?
Well, I don't want to say I can't agree with the entire premise that you just laid out before me. And I'll tell you why. Today, in this day and age, the pre-scouting of games, the video, there's no secrets anymore. Anything that the team in the green sweater would do, and you're going to play the team in the red sweater tomorrow, they've scouted you to the point they know what they're going to do. So the only reason I would disagree is in the fact is that the moment they identify a really skilled player on the red team, the green team then are doing, what can we do to counter that? So they're taking away that skill level that's really there and doing everything they can within the rules to check that person and make them become null and void. That part troubles me. All right. So, but I don't disagree in terms of what is it designed to do. I mean, the excitement, if we back up the clock and look at it today where they're playing 3-on-3 in overtime, that's exciting as heck. I think it's a little bit gimmicky from what I've been accustomed to. But when you look at the flow and the goal, that's it. And that goes back to a little bit what we talked about a while ago. Get rid of the restraining fouls. That guy that's got the talent should be able to play. The idea is if he's going to be checked, he just has to be checked legally. But I say here what I said before is that the teams will do what they can to negate that talented player to make him become average. Somehow I think we have to fix that.
And then Jean Beliveau was saying something interesting. He said that this is the most team-oriented sport. And he was saying that the average, and I may not get the numbers right, but he said the average goalie stops between 96 and 98% of all of the shots that are fired on him, so that the goals scored average is in low single digits percentage. And he says, and one defenseman doesn't change that, but a team defense can change that. And so therefore it really truly is a team defense working with the goalie that stops a team from scoring.
Well, I think I've cited in general managers meetings, and the first thing they always talk about, everybody's looking for that really great goalie. All right. And then they want a really good backup goalie, because today the goalie's not playing the 72 or 82 games where in the past, maybe they did. So they need goalie 1 and goalie 2 that are really good. in terms of the skill level, yeah, I mean, for Beliveau's perspective, when you say it's a team sport, I don't want to give you the old generic, there's no I in team and all that kind of stuff, but when you think about it, and this is why they say line 1, line 2, line 3, it's just a way of identifying people that are going out there to do the best they can. Here's what I get presented to me, pardon me, a number of occasions by people who are new to the sport. They cannot get over the fact that you wearing your red sweater, you go to the bench with 4 teammates, and within seconds out come 5 new players, and nothing has stopped. There aren't many sports that allow that to happen. That's why the flow and the go is so much like John Beliveau talks about. Why? Because you can have extended periods of play where there's been 3 or 4 line changes, complete line changes, 5 people going off, 5 coming on. That could happen 3 or 4 times a long period of just say go flow and go up and down the ice. There's no other sport that allows that to happen.
Yeah, it's something that amazes me when the average shift is less than a minute. It's like 40 something seconds, such that it really truly is a constant sprint. It's not like a marathon or, you don't see people standing still like you would in basketball or soccer on the field for even a minute.
No, and I agree. Just that's the part of the sell about the game here, continuous action. I can go to a university game. I'll use that as an example. There'd be most ones that I've been at, even though we're on the shelf right now. And you can go there, and I could take you to a hockey game and say, Brian, this game's going to start by 7:01, 7:02. And by 9:10, we're on our way out of there. That's just a little over 2 hours. Well, the unfortunate part of the National Hockey League is longer than that because you have commercial stoppages and timeouts and all those kind of things that are there. But when you really go back to and think about what hockey was, the way it was intended, you can. I looked at a game summary the other day. The game was less than 2 hours to play. That alone tells you there's flow and there's go and there's skating and there's no messing around. There's no scrums. There's no nothing. For that game to be played at any level in less than 2 hours, that just automatically says, man, oh man, they're going up and down that ice.
Is there one player that you'd like to watch play again?
Well, you get asked on the banquet circuit, you get asked, and you get everything from who's the dumbest player, which I refuse to answer because there's always somebody in the audience that's related to that person. And then you say is, okay, who's the most exciting? I would have to say this. In my mind, Bobby Orr. And I say Bobby Orr changed the game. When I look at it and say, I played defense for the Dixie Beehives, never thinking that I could play one remotely close to a Bobby Orr. But when you saw how he changed the game that would lead the rush up the ice, make a play at the net, and then be back doing the back checking, that to me was unheard of. And I take nothing away from the Gretzkys, Lemieux, and Mike Bossies, and all of those talented people that are easy to identify. But I simply say is, okay, you know what? In my mind, Bobby Orr changed the game and made it a much better game and made it a more exciting game just because of the skill and ability that young man had. And not that, just as an aside to all of that, Niagara Falls Flyers and the Oshawa Generals were owned by or managed by the Boston Bruins. I had the pleasure of flying to Boston to referee one hockey game one night. It was a league game between Oshawa and Niagara Falls. They filled the Boston Gardens for one purpose only, to showcase Bobby Orr. I never forgot that. That was I said one of your lifelong highlights when you start to make the list up. But that was all, and that's not the only reason why I would put Bobby Orr at the top of the list. I firmly believe he's changed the game for defensemen who used to get to the red line and shoot it in.
Yeah,
and they're not doing that.
Well, when I was a kid, I used to go to the Montreal Forum and watched J.C. Tremblay, which was spectacular. And he didn't necessarily do the rush, but he was known for that big high flip of the puck into the offensive zone. I used to spend some time in Ottawa, and Eric Carlson still is, but was an amazing defenseman that would rush for the net. But I got to tell you, I spent some time in Los Angeles, and when I went to work in Los Angeles at the time, the Kings were nothing. And they said, you can have all the seats you want if you just don't ask for any basketball. You can have all the hockey you want. And that was the summer they traded to get Wayne Gretzky. And I had already agreed that I would take no basketball, but all the hockey I could get. And I saw Gretzky, and the Kings weren't that great team, but Gretzky was amazing. And so that was a fun 2 years to watch Gretzky at the Kings for the first time.
Well, and I think the other part too, when you think about this, to go into the building, into the forum with all the pillars all the way around it, I mean, it was really, really, really impressive from the outside. To me, on the inside, it was generic. And to give an example, we went there to referee some of the games right at the start when the building was built and with expansion. They didn't even have a dressing room for officials. We dressed behind a snack bar in the early going. So as nice as we thought it looked outside, on the inside, it was a little painful at times. And then you had to walk a long way to, wherever you dress, you had to walk a long way to get out on to and from the ice and that kind of stuff. So what looked huge and grandiose, my heart tells me that some of it was missing a little bit of stuff.
We're chatting with Bryan Lewis tonight, former referee, over 1,000 games with the NHL, former referee in chief, and currently he is a town councillor with Halton Hills. We're going to take a break and we're going to come back and we're going to chat a little bit about politics in Halton Hills. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Bryan Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I'm chatting tonight with Bryan Lewis. He was a referee with the NHL, refereed over 1,000 games. I think what you said, Bryan, was that you skated, 7-point-something miles a night?
When we had it charted by a guy at Sheridan College, one referee would skate 7.9 miles a night. And then when we put two referees on the ice, it dropped to 5.7.
Times 1,000 games. That's a lot of skating.
It is. And I couldn't tell you, we went through a new pair of skates every year and, all the negative things you can think about it. But you know what? I do it all over again.
Fantastic. I can imagine. What a wonderful life. And you've seen North America. And as you said, you've seen parts of the world too, where you went and refereed and ran camps. But then you decided 22 years ago to go into politics. And now you're a town councillor with the town of Halton Hills. And the last couple of years, you said, have been very busy. And I can imagine the last 2 years have been unbelievably busy with COVID-19. And Halton Hills has changed. Halton Hills would have been at one point in time, the real boonies. And today it's really almost part of suburbia, is it not? Tell me a little bit about your job.
Well, if we back up the clock and just say, okay, growing up in the town, it was a small urban town. And I remember when I married my wife, Elaine, and the Pallet family lived on Dixie Road. And I'll give you their description. My late mother-in-law, Doris Pallet, said to me, away up there was their impression to get from Dixie Road to Georgetown was away up there. I was taking their daughter away up there, where today it's not. I used to go to the airport in 25 minutes, where now it's 45 minutes to an hour, but that's just based on traffic. So our idea was we were far enough away, but yet close enough to get wherever. And then in the political world, when that got presented to me by a councillor colleague at the time, I took it as a bit of a personal challenge. I took it as a bit of a, what can I do for my town? I never belonged to a service club because I was never around to go to meetings and that kind of stuff. And I probably would have got thrown out for not showing up at enough Lions Club meetings or Rotary Club meetings. But I thought from a political perspective, this is one thing that I could do. Not realizing total of how many times you get put on a committee for this. I'm on Conservation Halton Board. I'm on an organization, third vice president of Good Roads Ontario, and all other things that you get mixed up in, and whether that be chairing a committee or whatever. If somebody came along to you as the the current mayor was a councillor at the time, said, why don't you get involved in the political world? And I thought, it was a challenge, and I did, and did well. And I got acclaimed 1 year, one election. And I've actually lost track of, I don't know if I've been through 5 elections or 6 or whatever it is, the number is, it really doesn't matter, because you're at the whim of the people. If you don't do a good job, out you go. If you do a good job, they reelect you. And so what started out to be as I can't say fun, it was a thing maybe I should have done a little bit more homework in, only to figure out is, okay, how much time, because you got to remember here, for a guy that was in the officiating business for years and years, I left my house and maybe not get home for 10 days and maybe not get home for 2 weeks, or maybe not get home for 3. And then I had to be very careful here that I wasn't mixed up in the political world that had to be out of my house. And so there are some things that, quite frankly, I have to say is my family's first, that perhaps I can't go and cut your ribbon because I want to do a family event. And people, for the most part, have been very, very understanding. So the transition has been, I'll say, I don't want to use the word troublesome. It's been busy, and there seems to be no two things are the same. So which is unique in it. These things were made to be get dirty. Once you made your commitment, you know what, then just do a good job.
But the demands on a local politician are unbelievable to go, whether it's to cut ribbons or go speak at different events or, talk to ratepayers or whatnot. It really is an unbelievable, not 24/7, but for sure 7 days a week and probably 12 to 18 hours a day, is it not?
Well, and not only that, today there's no hardship in reaching people today, because you can do that by text, you can do that by email, and so stuff comes in the middle of the night. You wake up in the morning and say, "Oh, we got this problem here, got that problem there." So it's easier access to the political person. I just don't sit here and say, "I'm not answering my phone." I chart every message that comes in, and then I chart when I get back to them. And you want to pride yourself in doing a good job and being responsible. Otherwise, don't take it. Don't put your hat in the ring. Don't run for that position. If you're not going to do it properly. So as much as I say yes, I mean, we could highlight, I mean, if you wanted, Brian, I could sit here and highlight some of the things that have been really troublesome out in our rural environment. But you know what? I don't know if that's for today, but it just seems like that there's every day there's something going on. So it's, I don't want to say it's time consuming, because you have to know what it is when you get involved in it. There's going to be it's a job. That's all. In a small town.
Small town, but it's a pretty demanding job. Local politics is incredible. Let me ask you a couple of questions if I couldn't see what your opinion is. So one of the issues that a lot of people have been talking about is Metrolink's expansion, GO Transit, GO's operation to Brampton, then on to Georgetown. They want to make it all day, two-way, frequent service, such that Georgetown effectively becomes almost a railway suburb to Toronto. And then there was a fast train proposal that actually had a fast train all the way going to London with a big diversion around Georgetown so that it wouldn't go through downtown Georgetown. What do you think about rail service to Halton Hills and Georgetown?
We have, I'll say, 3 rail lines coming into our community, one from the east, one from the west, and one from the south. One comes up from Milton. The Milton one, which is not really far from me, it's a freight-only track. I do not understand why it's not used for passenger services, someplace, somehow, going from wherever to whatever. In terms of Metrolinx's expansion, yes, we meet with them from time to time. They've talked about doubling the track. The 2 track stops in Georgetown, they park at least 3 trains here overnight. They're looking at now more land west of Georgetown in order to park trains overnight, because the demand is becoming greater and greater. Myself, I detest driving in the Toronto core if I don't have to. And if I go down for Good Roads meetings, the good news now is they've got trains at nighttime, where before the last train came in, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and we were done. Unless you wanted to drive to Brampton, you could get a later train there. Now I can get a train I think the last one I took down was like 9:30, 9:45 at night on the GO train. So it is, I'll say, are we going to get what they have across the lakeshore line? Never. But are we going to get more and better service? Yes. And I think part of that is, you talked about one from London. I think that's 1 train a day. And I do believe it does go through Georgetown. But we have trains that start in Kitchener that work their way all the way along the line. Our service has become so much better from what it was when it started. And I can only think right now with the GO and the Metrolinx people, we communicate with them a fair bit. And we're advocating for all day 2-way service. And you got to be, it's a business. There's no point in having that car, that bus, that whatever, Ryan, that's empty. Just doesn't make good business sense. So I think what they're doing is doing the measuring sticks to find out, is it viable? Yes. As I said before, that we've already talked about track expansion to get us from Georgetown on up through Acton and on the way to Guelph.
One of the proposals to increase the passenger rail through Georgetown on the way to Kitchener and London is to get the freight off of that line. And I guess the challenge is the CN trains that come from the south have to, and I don't know the topography well, you will undoubtedly know it far better, but have to climb the escarpment to Georgetown and then go back down the escarpment coming out. And it ends up being quite challenging. So therefore, there's a proposal to have CP and CN share the tracks that go from Milton eastward across the 401 and then build new tracks along the 407 to take it to Bramalea. What that would do would take away the freight trains from Georgetown, but also would allow dramatic increase in passenger rail. Does that make any sense to you?
Well, it does, because I've been on GO trains coming out of Toronto that we've had to stop and sit and wait. Why? Waiting for that freight train to go by. So is there interference by freight? Yeah. And you know what, today, these aren't small trains. The track that's roughly a mile away from where I live, and there's two tracks there. So you can get held up by the freight train going north, and within seconds, the freight train going south, because they have to pass there. My biggest concern of that is, okay, emergency services. You've effectively cut people off on either side of that, from the fire, from the ambulance, that kind of stuff. And I know there's restrictions in there as to how long they can block a track. And I don't know if they adhere to those all the time. I seriously doubt it. So to me is to, and we got to understand it, with what they're proposing in the Milton area, they're talking about a lot more freight trains around here. So to do whatever diversions they've got of the freight trains, I would say would give us the opportunity for more reliable passenger travel. And on to that, if I said to you, Brian, let's go down to the 401 tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock, it's a parking lot. So what are they doing to get those people off there? So there has to be a better option than me parking my car in the 401 for a long period of time.
So one of the things that, because I agree with you, that I used to drive across the 401 and would look at the lineup of 18 wheelers that would appear to go from horizon to horizon, and they were hardly moving at all. One of the proposals that the Ford government came out with just recently is to build this new ring road, only halfway around Toronto, but around Toronto, 413, that is going to start at the 401, 407 interchange just between Mississauga and Milton, and then go up through Caledon, north of Brampton, and come up and connect in with the 400. So it's going to miss, I guess, Halton Hills, but would provide, I presume, better access to the east of you, and a better way of getting around Toronto. I'm surprised, actually, it started where it started rather than farther west near, Milton Highway 25 or something like that. What do you think of the 413? Does it make sense?
No. Next question.
Why?
And allow me to say why. It does come into Halton Hills. It comes into the area I represent at the 407 and the 401. This was originally talked about to go all the way across the north, go to Guelph and on to Kitchener. They didn't want to get involved with the Niagara Escarpment and all the escarpment areas that are up there. So they took, in my mind, they took an easier way out by saying, let's come down to the bottom end and dump it onto the 407 and the 401. Right now, already chaos. Right now, where we as a community advocated that 401, if it was expanded like it was to Mississauga, could go on out past Milton, which is exactly what they're working on today. But already we're going to dump that much more traffic from this 413 onto it. Doesn't make any sense. This, to me, should have been a road that if they're going to go through and mess up as much of the rural environment as they are, why not run it across the way it was originally planned, across up north towards Guelph, and not come anywhere near the 401 highway that can handle any more traffic today? And what we notice the moment that there's a problem on the 401 highway, all of our rural roads get impacted significantly. So Steeles Avenue becomes a parking lot. 5 side roads a parking lot. 10 side road is a mess. And you could go stand on one of those corners and there's a problem on the 401 just by the amount of cars that are getting off to go elsewhere. And that 413, I don't know, is going to enhance anything, but just provide more chaos at the 401 and 407 area. If that has to go, why wouldn't they have stayed where it was originally talked about, I'll say 15 years ago, up north where it goes to Guelph and Kitchener? And
so where would it connect in with the 401? At Guelph?
Well, yeah, or maybe even just continue across. I can't remember, Brian, right off the top of my head, whether it was going to continue as a new road right from Guelph right over, or was it going to go to Guelph area and then come back down to the 401? I don't know. My impression was that was a road that's going to be separate on its own and go directly from the 400 to Kitchener.
So we're going to have a population the size of Montreal come to Toronto in the next 10, 15 years, supposedly 1.5 million, 2 million people coming to the Greater Toronto Area. And while, some of it's going to be in condos in the 416, a lot of it's going to be in the 905 and even in the areas outside of the 905. Milton is one of the fastest growing communities in Canada today. Caledon is supposed to go from 50,000 to 500,000 over the course of the next 10 or 15 years. Some statistics suggest, and I can imagine Georgetown and your area is going to have similar kind of growth. How can we possibly have that kind of growth and, you know, frankly, provide the dream of a single family dwelling to my kids and your kids if we don't have dramatic increases in infrastructure?
Well, I would do it this way. I mean, and we have some people who advocate that we should never take away 1 acre of farmland to provide 1 acre of housing, right? But to me, it has to be done, should be done in a very sensible manner with the proper growth. We have set aside 1,000 acres up here right now called Vision Georgetown. We've done all of the planning that we need and virtually know where everything's going to go. Thought it was a done deal with all the developers. And then all of a sudden they take us now, they don't like it because they want one more house here or one more house there. And we're at the Ontario Municipal Board, or well, I can't even remember the name of it now, but the argument goes on. And the other part of that is our town is serviced by surface or well water. We do not have enough water to service the property that we're talking about. There has to be a pipe up from Lake Ontario. So that becomes part of the hindrance. We do know developers would put that pipe in tomorrow in order to get that 1,000 acres sprung open for development. So that's the kind of stuff we're working on. We're also looking at industrial growth down in our Steeles Avenue corridor, that we still have land down there that will be industrial related land that we need for tax purposes. And not only that, we need just from a business perspective. When I started going to and from the airport, 1967, I said to you before, I could get there in 20, 25 minutes. And we never saw any growth until you got to Dixie Road. And nowadays the growth is there right out to Halton Hills. And so if we looked at it here and said, okay, there has to be that planning for the industrial, there has to be that planning for residential growth and all those things that come with it. It just has to be done and done properly. So we're already in the process and prepared to go with 1,000 acres once we get through this OMB hearing process to decide what's the right thing. We thought we had the right thing done, and only to find out here that here we are now, we're back before the courts.
I spoke with Joe Barrage, principal of urban strategies, a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying that Toronto in the next 10, 15 years, with this growth that we're talking about, is going to become the third potentially largest CMA in North America after New York, Los Angeles, maybe ahead of Chicago. And he said, relative to the sizes of those cities, and the CMA being contiguous urban development, so not necessarily just political, Toronto, but the Greater Toronto area. He said, we've got less tracks for rail and less highways than any of the 5 biggest cities in North America, that we've dramatically underinvested in infrastructure, and we desperately need to if we're not going to have complete congestion. What do you think?
Well, I think for any one of us that have been in major cities, and I'll use Chicago. I was always taken, I'll say, a pleasant surprise by, you see a significant road, and I'll use here, whether it be the 400 series highways or whatever have you. There's a lot of land tied up there. Why can't there be a train track down the middle? Why can't there be a train track down the side? I mean, they buy and they tie up a lot of land today for potential development. All right. Well, that development there could be today, whether that be a rail track or something that makes it just that much easier to move around and not create here. I firmly believe what they're creating here is more parking lots, and where there becomes then more exhaust fumes, becomes all that kind of stuff that we don't want within our community. So I think growth to a certain degree, yes, I can see us getting bigger. There's no question of that. And we have people, one of our slogans is small town living at its best. And we can hang on to that handle for a period of years, but sooner or later, we don't want to be like Milton. They've got the land, they've taken all kinds of growth. We can't, as I said before, we don't have the water to be able to supply that. You can't turn your tap on up here and let it run all day because we have a genuine concern here. We can't afford to be wasting water. And some of our growth is hampered as a result of no water. So our game plan here is that perhaps slow and right might be better than fast and wrong. We're not in a rush. We want to do this in a very deliberate manner, and whether that be industrial land, whether that be farmland, whether it be whatever. Not long ago, I spent a great deal of time out down farm laneways actually talking to the farmers. We've got problems up here with water. One guy opened he's in the horse business, started his tap, and out came was brown crap that you wouldn't feed to anybody. He's trucking in water. So a lot of the stuff that our farmers have to do today just to exist is really not fair to the farming community. So sometimes that land should be something else. all the farmers said to me, he says, I want this to be grade 1 land when I'm trying to sell it.
My 2 favorite places in your area are the Terracotta Inn and a wonderful truck restaurant that's got the best Italian food just south of Georgetown on the highway going on Highway 7. It's this little truck van that serves great Italian food. What are your favorite places?
Oh my goodness. Glen Tavern is one in a small village in Glen Williams. And then there's another restaurant right in Glen Williams that are, there's 2 of them down there that are, in my mind, some of the best in the area. And the moment that you try to get in, you got to book a seat a week in advance. And that's not even without the COVID stuff. That's just whatever. My wife went the other day to an event to honor and recognize a lady in downtown Georgetown called Bridgewood. And so there are some of those that sit in that close environment that we really don't have to travel very far to be content. And I could say, yeah, there's 1 or 2 outside of our community, but I'm not even mentioning these because those that are within the Halton Hills boundary, they do a pretty good job. And when you mentioned the Terracotta Inn, that's just half of portion of Terracottas in my area represented. The other side of Winston Churchill is in that, I think it's Peel side of it. And I've been to Terracotta Inn, excellent. But I kind of draw the line, say, no, it's just on the other side of the border for Halton Hills. So I can't pump their tires because there's some within our community that are, I'll put it, they're on our favorite list. And,
do you know this Italian food truck that I mentioned?
I can't. No, I'm when you're saying Highway 7.
Just southeast of Georgetown. Just on the way in, just by the Canadian Tire.
In Georgetown?
Yeah. You got to try
Gosh,
it. Fantastic Italian food.
Fantastic. I mean, I love Italian food, and I'd like to. You're not talking just by Canadian Symposium?
No, it's a food truck. In the parking lot.
I know the one. You're by the Esso gas station.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And it could be. I'm not. If I ever said to my wife, "I'm taking you out for supper tonight, dear," and we pull up in front of a food truck, I would be looking for the next divorce lawyer.
Well, in the summertime on the picnic tables outside, it's fantastic. Or for takeout. It's almost New Year's. Do you have a message for everyone for 2022?
Let's be patient. I mean, we're all struggling. There's nothing I relayed a while ago about it within our own family. There's nothing that's normal. And I don't know how many times I've said to people here, just give everybody a chance, whether that's somebody doing a service for you, whether it's a town staff person, whether it's somebody you meet on the street. My immediate reaction would be, you know what, let's slow it down a wee bit. We all need a little bit more time to make the right decisions, and we will win this battle.
Bryan Lewis, former referee, former referee-in-chief, current town councillor in the town of Halton Hills. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing a little bit of your thoughts about politics and a little bit of your history on the ice. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Brian. Nice to get involved again in the Mississauga aspect.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for joining us. Good night, everybody.